Tonight, we're going to be talking about capturing ghosts on camera. There is a trick to it. I don't want you to give up on it. But you're going to go through a lot of pictures before you ever get anything worthwhile. So there are some tips and tricks we're going to teach you that will improve your chances. And so I'm going to go ahead and start right now with going through those chances for you. There are a number of cameras that you can get. You can use a digital single lens reflex. One of the things about the digital is it's inexpensive in that the pictures are cheap. You don't have to go and get them processed. Now, the old film cameras, the 35 millimeter, you didn't get to see them instantly. You had to take them in, get them processed, and by the time you got them back, you had spent $20 or so to get all those pictures processed. And you couldn't see it until you got it. Now with the digital cameras, you can instantly see your pictures, and you can tell whether they're any good or not. Then we've got the handheld video camera that's got night vision on it. And then there are two types of those. There are the ones that are tape, and there are the ones that are digital. Now, a lot of people are going old school again because of the talk right now about the voices being heard when we're collecting EVPs being electromagnetic in nature. And some are thinking that tape is more conducive to picking up those noises and those sounds if they're of a electromagnetic nature than a digital machine might be. So that's something you have to decide for yourself. Again, we have the hardwired cameras, and I prefer hardwired cameras whenever we set up with a 12 camera system monitoring the scene that we're going to be investigating. A lot of the entities can interfere with wireless transmissions. And so a lot of times you're going to get or have trouble obtaining your pictures and stuff that you're doing with those videos. That's why I like to have the hardwired video camera, where we have now thermal cameras, and they are pretty expensive. Again, the pictures are instantly available, and you can sit there and you can actually be watching on the screen while there's activity, and then you pull the trigger on it to take the picture. So it uses infrared, so the pictures are a full spectrum camera. They are custom modified. I have a friend that has one. I have some pictures she took that are going to be on the presentation here. And the only thing that's wrong with that is you have to have a special lighting system with them. That camera takes in a full range of light, even light that you cannot see with the human eye. You know, it's beyond the range of our eyes. So it can capture things that we can't see, which may be advantageous to paranormal investigators. Going on what she told me and what she's captured and stuff, I haven't invested in a full spectrum camera, but it might be something we want to look at down the road. And I'll get back with April and talk to her and see how things have gone with her full spectrum camera. She's had it for about 10 years now. The other is the SLS camera, and I'm kind of on the limb with it. It's a camera that we've got the apps for your cell phone. I demonstrated the one on how to do ghost hunting on cell phone. And it's got the little stick figures that get real active on you. They can be falsely triggered. There are things that will do false triggers on that and make these little stick figures appear, and there's nothing really there. So I'm not sure it's not artificial intelligence and a game. I need to be convinced that they're really picking something up. I'm just not convinced of it yet. And if we're doing scientific work, I want to use real scientific instruments. I don't want to use toys that don't work. When you're getting ready to go take pictures, first thing you want to do is make sure your batteries are all charged. If you have the ones that charge up, be sure that they've been charging. I charge mine for days. It takes days to get all these batteries charged before we go on a call. Also, you want to make sure that before you start to use it, check the lens and make sure the lens is clean. Because in the paranormal world, a smudge on the lens can cause an anomaly in the picture that you think that you have captured something when you haven't. And then, or you catch something and you've taken this picture and you get all excited, and then you see the smudge on your lens and you got to throw the picture out. Breaks your heart. Anyway, that's life. Make sure your lens is clean before you start taking your pictures. You want to hold the camera steady. Now, a lot of times we're in low light conditions, and so that causes us some problems in that I have problems. I have crippled hand. And a lot of times when I try to push a trigger on the camera, it causes me to jerk the camera. And when you're in low light with long exposures, that causes wavy lights in the scene. And so you get a lot of weird stuff because the camera moved. So if you've got weird stuff in there, it might be because your camera moved. Now, when I'm doing low light photography in a cemetery or someplace like that at night, I've got a monopod that I keep my camera on, and that way I know that when I mash that button, I'm not shaking my camera. So you want to be sure and consider, hold the camera steady, hold it tight against your body when you're taking the picture. Don't extend your arms out where you can shake and stuff, You want to be secure with your camera. In the cold, you want to hold your breath when you're snapping a picture. Why? Well, first off, in the cold, when you get your camera out of the car, it needs some time to climatize, because if it's been warm in the car and you bring it out in the cold, condensate's going to condense all over your lens. So you've got little water droplets on your lens, you're going to get all kinds of crazy stuff. So give your camera time to adjust to the temperature so you don't have to fight that problem. The next thing is that sometimes when it's cold and you exhale, you'll put out a little cloud of moisture, and it appears as an ectoplasm, or can appear as an ectoplasm, and it'll cause you to think that you're getting a ghostly encounter when it's your own breath. Also, you want to, we don't allow any smoking in our group, or not in the place where we're investigating. Where we're taking pictures and stuff, smoking is off limits totally. Cigarette smoke can blow across the camera, and you can set it up. Now, there are times when we've had smoke machines that we've had set up on the floor, and we're blowing smoke on the floor because we're wanting to see where the air currents are, and if a ghost comes through there and disturbs anything, that cloud of smoke is going to move. But that doesn't mean we want people smoking cigarettes or cigars on the scene, because that can blow in front of the camera. And again, we got to throw pictures out and we don't know. You want to make sure that you keep your camera straps out of the way of the lens, or your hands too. Sometimes people get their heads up there, and sometimes people have long hair and the hair can blow around. So be sure it's in a ponytail or something so that it can't get in front of your camera. You don't want to have hair in the middle of your picture. You want to shoot pictures in groups as controlled photos. Now, normally we try to shoot groups of 3, bam, 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 so that if something is caught in one of them, we can tell whether it moved between the next shot or not. I've got some samples of that we're going to show you. You want to beware of matrixing when you're reviewing your pictures, even when you're looking in your camera. A lot of times you blow your pictures up. A lot of times we get things in the windows that appear like faces. You've got to face it that on the digital cameras, the software is designed to look for faces, and it tries to create faces. So a lot of times it's going to try to do what its electronics tell it and create a face. So we have to watch for the matrixing and make sure that it's not a face that's being created by the matrixing of the camera or objects that we're seeing. We'll go through a bunch of those that we have samples of. Be ready for insects and dust that cause orbs. I carry a laser with me when I'm shooting pictures. And a lot of times I'll shoot that laser beam out through where the subject matter is. If I see dust particles and moisture out there, I don't even bother. I've been on places where, especially like some of the dirt roads we've been out on, Patterson Road. There's some other roads we've been out on that are dirt, and a car comes by, there's dirt in the air. And even on investigation in somebody's house, a lot of times they'll stir some dust up, somebody walking through, and these little pieces of dust are circulating in the air. You take a picture, flash hits it, bam, you got to, and depending on how close it is, if it's close to your camera, it's going to be huge. If it's real far off, it's going to be real teeny tiny small. So you can't base it on size or anything. You just got to watch for insects. And some of the insects look really weird when you get a picture of them. Some of the mosquitoes are really interesting. Using a setting that will freeze your subject matter if you're using a flash. If we're in conditions where you're using a flash, you want to be sure that you've got your settings right where you're going to freeze the motion. You want to freeze people. Even in the low light conditions, you want to do that if you're not using a flash. Now, the thing about low light conditions without a flash is we try to use a long exposure if we can, so that if there's any movement out there, we will get a blurry subject matter. But the camera has to actually be still for the entire time that you've got this long exposure going, so your camera needs to be on a tripod. And again, it's important shooting sequences of 3. I can't stress that enough. You're going to see why here in just a second. Wrong way. Okay, here are the real tips for taking pictures. Introduce yourself. When you get there, hold your camera in your hand, or if you're waiting for the temperature to change and your camera to adjust to the cold temperatures outside, and say, is there anybody here? My name is John. We're not going to hurt you. I want to take some pictures. Would you pose for me? We're going to be courteous and kind to them and treat them like real people. They were real people. They are real people. And they think like real people. So they're not going to show up if you don't ask permission to shoot their pictures. And that is a big thing about taking some of these pictures of ghosts. And we've had more success when we've asked if they will pose for us than if we're just shooting off pictures. Another thing that is important is a lot of times you'll get instincts where you feel like you're being watched. You feel like it's from the right or from the left or something. If you have that instinct, you want to be sure and snap a picture in that direction periodically, because a lot of times we have caught objects that way by following our instincts. Another thing that's important in taking these pictures is trying to pick the right location. We try to pick locations that are haunted. And right now I'm kind of on a kick to visit historical places where a lot of people have had a lot of energy stored up. The energy levels are high, and we're going to see a lot of people that died in that location. Take the San Seta Battleground is one of the things we're working on right now. 600 Mexicans were killed there in a massacre even. And so the energy levels are high. I was out there, I burned through 3 9-volt batteries in my EMF detectors before I even got anything. I couldn't even get my recorder to work. So pick a good location. It improves the chances of you getting pictures of what you want. A lot of times you want to use trigger objects. In one of the pictures that I'm going to show you, I'll talk to you about trigger objects a little further. We also had one where we were at a place where there were reports of children playing, around the place. And so we had put some toys on the floor, and I hadn't had in my kit in a while some baby powder or anything like that to put down. So we wound up having to use some coffee creamer is what we poured on the floor. And we had some balls and stuff, and the balls were placed in the coffee creamer. So the next morning when we went in there, we had children's handprints in there. The balls had been moved, and so they had had a ball. Now, that's the only evidence we had. We didn't catch the children themselves, but trigger objects do cause ghosts to appear. The camera can catch a lot of detail in a low light. And that's a camera that you want to pick a camera that will do a lot of detail. That's why you want a good quality digital single lens reflex or whatever camera you use. You want a good quality picture so that you can pick up detail. You want to hold the camera steady. Use a tripod or a monopod, as I've already told you. Set the camera to a long exposure setting if you can. Use a remote shutter release. That will help keep you from, shaking the camera when you mash the trigger button. Shoot again in sequences of 3. You're going to hear me tell you that over and over and over again because it's really important. It's one of the most important aspects of ghost hunting. When finished shooting pictures, thank the entities for having come out. You may or may not have had any. You may or may not know at this point. Most of the time we've known because we've kind of been looking at the pictures as we're taking them, but thank them for posing and cooperating with you. It goes a long way, and especially if you're going to come back another time. Now then, this particular shot was taken at the Northington Plantation near Wharton, Texas, and this was done in the slave quarters. The lady that you see in the rocking chair is a descendant of a slave. She was there at the plantation that day. Channel 8 had been out there doing a documentary on the slaves and slavery at the time. And we just happened to be there the same day they were doing that. She was still there. We got her to stay, and she had some chains that some of the slaves were chained up with. They're laying on the bed there. They had tags of what their slave number was when they were auctioned off. And she had a whole assortment of things that we used as trigger objects. Now, trigger object is something that we can use in the room that would cause an emotional response, perhaps in a ghost or something. Anyway, we captured some orbs in this particular one. They're all on video. I'm not going to attempt to show you video tonight. I'm just showing you pictures. Now, if you look at the picture on the left-hand side, up above the head of our slave, you will see a black shadow starting to appear. This photo is by Cigar Joe. On the picture on the left, that shadow has moved in front of this young lady. So there's a black shadow figure there that Joe caught in this picture. And this is part of his sequence of 3. You can still see the lady's hand there, but there is no black shadow in front of the young lady in the second photo there. This is a photo by John Strobin. When I shot the first photo on the left, I noticed that my flash went off, but I was in a dark cloud. I shot it, the second picture I shot is the one on the right. So the black shadow figure moved out of the way to let me shoot the picture of the entire grave. There was a huge black shadow there. Really weird, but that is the result of it. And if I hadn't taken multiple camera shots, or Joe hadn't taken multiple camera shots, we wouldn't have this presentation. Now, this is a shot that is also by John Strobin. I really wanted to get one from Gerald, but I couldn't find it. Gerald has one at the Wanshi Cafe in Spring with a ghost on the stairway. And I couldn't find that one to post here. But Gerald, if you get a chance, if you would send me one, I'd like to add it to the slide presentation when you get a chance. This was taken at the Schulenburg Hotel in Schulenburg, Texas. Again, we had weird stuff happening there, a lot of different things. Both of these pictures are the same hallway. I can't explain what happened in the picture on the left. I can't even explain what's there. It kind of looks like somebody on the floor, and it looks like some flames coming off of them going upward. And in the picture on the right, that's what the control photo looks like. And I'm telling you, I have no idea what happened here. Now, some of my team think that this is a really significant photo, but it is interesting that something tried to appear here. And so we do have a paranormal picture. Let's talk about reviewing the pictures. You want to use photo editing software to see if you have any anomalies. A lot of times when we're taking these pictures, I'm going to show you some pictures where we've altered the color in the pictures to bring out what we're seeing. Or in one case, Joe saw it with his eye over there, which is why he took a picture of it. And then he tried to enhance it with color, and we'll see how that works. When you're also reviewing your pictures, we want to enlarge them through our photographic software as large as we can to examine it thoroughly, because a lot of times you may see a face in a window or different things. We want to debunk all of our photos, and there are, if there's a reasonable explanation for what happened, then we got to throw it out. Or if there's something like cigarette smoke and we're not sure, we got to throw it out. So let's be careful in our procedures so that we don't have to throw out valid evidence, that we can always use our evidence. You want to check around windows and bushes and doorways, because these entities like to go in and out through some of these things. And a lot of times you'll inadvertently catch something going in or out of a doorway. The next thing you want to do is compare your shots. Just like I showed you the grave, that it was partially dark and the other one was lighted. You can see that there's differences in the shots. Why? You start to wonder, ask questions, figure it out. When in doubt, we have to throw it out. I'm sorry. In this particular picture on the left, that's the normal exposure that you see on the left. This is a picture by Cigar Joe Akabala. It's taken at the Tremont Hotel. Off to the right is the reason he took the picture. Now, actually, when you go back and look now, that you can see in the back corner on the right-hand side in the green photo, you can see a ghost materializing. If you go back and look at the regular picture, you can just barely see it in the left-hand side. But by changing the color and enhancing the picture that way, it brought out the white spot that you see right there. This is one of the control photos that was taken, and now it's gone. It was only there for a second. This is a picture by John Strobin taken at the Velvet Peddler in Crosby, Texas. This particular one I put in here because you can get some strange stuff. What we're looking at is we're looking through the door that is closest to you, that you see the frame on, is a glass door. Behind it was another wall. There were some other things out there, but you're getting multiple reflections because of this glass door that caused anomalies in this picture. There's nothing paranormal about this picture whatsoever. It's just interesting that, you know, the glass door right here that you see goes all the way to that frame there. There's the handle for the door. That door was closed, and we're getting reflections off the glass. Here again, the photo on the left is a photo that was taken on investigation. I don't remember who took this. I think I did, but I'm not sure. But anyway, you see this anomaly up here on the ceiling. Here I've blown up that anomaly over on this side, and it's a reflection off this picture casting light on the ceiling. Now, what would you have thought that was? This was sent to us by a client, and they said, hey, we got an orb right up here in this window. Well, looking at this picture, I see all these Christmas lights, and I see right here on the ground, I could tell that a flash was used by this photographer. Over here in these windows, I can see the reflection. When I blow it up, I can see the reflection of the Christmas lights here in the yard. And so this has to be thrown out because that's not really an orb. That happens to be a reflection of the flash from the camera. Now over here, you might have thought that might have been an orb too, but actually that's the license plate, and those are the tail lights on a car sitting there. So you have to examine your photographs, because nothing like putting a photograph out there and said, hey, I got an orb or I got a ghost here, and then somebody tells you what it really is and you have egg on your face and look silly. This photograph was taken by Siobhan Hewitt. Now, what's interesting about this photograph is it's not real clear until you really get to looking at it. But if you look at it, and my first thought was that this truck had overheated, and that this smoke cloud that you see here and this smoke cloud that you see here was coming out from under the hood of this truck. But this truck hadn't been running 2 days, according to the witness here and the witness there. So it appears that in this particular picture, wings have been added to this. Now, is there an angel standing behind Dayton in this picture? Who knows? But we can clearly see the outline of wings on both sides of this gentleman, Dayton. This photograph has been on the internet forever, and we like it because it's a real good ghost photo. This little child here was crying, and the reason this child was crying is she didn't want to go over and be in this photo because of this kid here who was a ghost, and nobody else saw the ghost but the child. But the camera picked this ghost up, and you could see the face very clearly behind the girl's legs. This picture is kind of interesting. It's probably one I took. It was in a batch that we had. I really don't know. Sometimes, like I say, I jerk my camera a little bit. Now, I think this is all motion on the part of the camera, but I do see a person over here. I see the head very clearly. I see the red jacket they're wearing, and it looks like that there's some kind of a wall here. They're right at a wall. But, it could be that this was, my first thought is, just looking at it, that might have been taken at a park or a theme park or something, where there was a ride where there was an arm coming through, while there was a person standing over there, and it just swerved through because of the extended length of the exposure, which is possible. But hey, I don't know what happened, because this was not taken at a theme park. This was actually taken on one of our ghost hunts, and it was in the batch, and I really had no explanation for it, but all we could do was throw it out. This photo is taken by Wheels Riggins, and this was taken at the place where Santa Ana was captured. And this is an ecto mist that was forming. I didn't see it while I was there. Gerald was in his wheelchair. He took the picture, and actually I kind of see a little bit of maybe a face here, or mouth starting to form. And I say that because I'm just starting to kind of see it now, but I hadn't realized that before. But there's another picture we're going to look at that's made me look at this one again. This one was taken over on Patterson Road at a bridge, again by Wheels Riggins. And again, this cloud was not visible to us. We were unaware of it. It just shows in the photograph. So again, it is probably a spirit that has decided to materialize for our camera because of, in response to our request to pose for pictures and to talk to us. This picture is another picture by Siobhan Hewitt. She was out in the yard with Rachel Riggins. That one in Schulenburg, Rachel was with me on the 3rd floor when we took that picture. So she's witness to that. We always have witnesses with us when we're taking our pictures. Rachel was a witness on this one. And this ecto mist was forming right here during their picture shoot out in the yard. I think this is a real interesting picture. This is a few seconds later. This is one of the pictures that was taken in the sequence, and you can see the mist has become more visible. This is the only picture and the only time we ever saw a white cat. Was it a real cat? I don't think so. I think this is a ghost cat, but I can't prove it. But this makes this picture really interesting because I don't believe that cat was real, but I can't prove it. Here's a control photo, the one that's taken after it. Again, you kind of see an eye here and kind of a face overall trying to form, it looks like to me here. But you'll notice that the other stuff is in the background and there is no cat. This is another picture by Siobhan, same location, same investigation. And to me, this kind of looks like a person's head forming here. And it looks like their arm here with their hand right here, with their hands, kind of cupped. Like he's getting ready to hug somebody. But anyway, this is another picture by Siobhan Guin. Now we studied this picture a bit. This is very clearly a profile of a person. And it turns out that Siobhan's husband had died about 5 years before this photo was taken. And she had some pictures of her husband she shared with us. And that is definitely the profile with his mustache right there on his face. And we are firmly convinced that this is Siobhan's husband, Stephen, that came with her on this investigation. Here we're doing an investigation at a cemetery. And again, this photo is by Siobhan. You'll notice that there's a mist forming, an ecto mist, and it looks like a wolf. And so this was commented on by a lot of the people. We'd taken a bunch of students to the cemetery from our leisure learning class on ghost hunting. And we have this wolf that formed behind us. Very interesting. This one, I think it's a ghost materializing, trying to materialize there, and the camera was just a little out of sync when it popped up and captured it. It wasn't at a full materialization, so it was just starting or just ending. But anyway, the headlights in the background there are very visible. And you can see there's no camera shake, or those would be, streaked. This is a shots from the full spectrum camera. And you can see that when she didn't have a full spectrum light source to use with this camera, so without the full spectrum light source and special lighting, it can't fully function. Now, so it comes up with this weird color. But in the one on the right, and this is in 2009, she had this, so she's had this camera for some time. There's an interesting shadow there on the wall. I don't know what caused that shadow. I never asked her, and she never explained, but it would be interesting to find out. That has always puzzled me, and I've always thought that's interesting because it really looks like whatever it is sitting right there. This is a photograph of a K2 meter. Why is it so blurry? Because it doesn't look like that. Are we shaking the K2 meter? I don't know. We're either shaking the K2 meter or we're shaking the camera. Again, the camera shake is kind of messing things up for us. Now, a number of years ago, I came across this on the internet. I'm going to use it. I would be happy to give credit to whoever spent the time and the energy to put this collage together. But these are some types of orbs that some people have caught that are caused by moisture. These are not true orbs. These are moisture orbs. So a lot of times when you or take a picture, you get backscatter from the flash, and you get these results in your photograph. And these are kind of pretty clear. Now, the actual orbs are clear, well, kind of clear. They're bluish in color, but they're very transparent. You can see through them, and they float. They're kind of like the bubbles. You go through that bubble blower, and you blow the bubbles like the kids do. That's more like what an orb really looks like. These are samples of dust orbs. These are dust orbs in motion. Sometimes if you're on a long exposure on your camera, your dust is going to float, and it's floating in the air, and you get some unusual patterns. These are insects, and you can clearly see this one here is a mosquito, and a couple of these others. They clearly have mosquito things. Now there's Tinkerbell. My goodness, we caught Tinkerbell. No, we didn't catch Tinkerbell. That's another insect. For your photography and video softwares, I try to use all the time Adobe Photoshop and Adobe Premiere Pro. Now you can also use Windows Paint, and Windows has a photographic program that you can use for looking at your photographs. But that will get you started in doing your photography. There are apps for your phone, which I show you on the one on the phone, where we have the thermal camera that will go on your phone. We have the SLS camera that will go on your phone. So there are a couple of photography apps, and then you've got your phone that has a camera on it that you can use for taking pictures. So your cell phone can be a very handy device for ghost hunting. Happy shooting, and get some great evidence. Because some of the videos are going better, people are paying more attention to them if they're short. I'm going to cut this off here, and we'll end the program here at this point. And that is all I've got for cameras and photography. Anybody have any questions or comments?